All right, Bills Mafia, it's time to talk about the group that could make or break this entire defense heading into the 2026 season. We're talking about the edge rushers, the outside linebackers, the guys living on the line of scrimmage whose entire job is to make opposing quarterbacks' lives an absolute living nightmare. And this offseason, Buffalo went out and completely reshaped this room. So the big question heading into training camp is simple. Did they do enough? Let's break it all the way down because there is a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the reasons to be genuinely excited because Buffalo made two massive investments in this group and both of them deserve some serious attention. First up, the Bills went out and landed veteran Bradley Chubb in free agency. Now, Chubb is entering his age 30 season, and yes, injuries have absolutely been part of his story over the years. But here's the thing people need to understand. When this man has been healthy, he has been a legitimately productive football player. Across his 5 healthy seasons in the league, he has never once produced fewer than 7.5 sacks in a single year. That's a real, consistent baseline of production. And last season, playing on a genuinely bad Miami defense that struggled mightily to stop the pass, Chubb still managed to rack up 8.5 sacks and 48 total pressures. That's not just solid, that's downright impressive given the circumstances he was working in. Now, nobody is trying to convince you that Bradley Chubb is still that electric top 5 overall draft pick version of himself from years ago, but there is real reason to believe he's got another productive season in him, especially now that he's further removed from his last major injury and stepping into a defense with far more talent surrounding him. And beyond the pure football production, by all accounts, Chubb is an outstanding locker room presence too. Word is already spreading about how much he's taken the team's rookie edge rusher under his wing, mentoring him and setting the tone early. That kind of veteran leadership matters just as much as sacks on a stat sheet. And speaking of that rookie, the Bills didn't stop with Chubb. They used their very first pick in the 2026 NFL Draft on another outside linebacker, landing T.J. Parker out of Clemson. This kid is intriguing in every sense of the word. He's got size, he's got power, he's got legitimate explosiveness in his game. He put together a truly dominant campaign at Clemson back in 2024, and even though his production dipped a bit in his final college season, the tape is still loaded with flashes of real, translatable talent. What makes Parker even more valuable is the versatility he brings to the table. He's not just a stand-up edge rusher living on the outside shoulder of the tackle. He's shown the ability to reduce inside and rush from tighter alignments too, which gives the coaching staff real flexibility in how they deploy him. Add in the fact that he's on a cost-controlled rookie contract, and suddenly you've got a potential difference maker who won't break the bank for years to come. That's exactly the kind of value every team is chasing in the draft. But here's what really makes this group exciting. It's not just about the 2 new additions. It's about the depth that now exists from top to bottom. No, this isn't a room with a true superstar, a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby type of game-wrecking force. But there is a legitimately deep collection of intriguing pieces. You've got Greg Rousseau, a talented, well-compensated young player still just 26 years old, entering a totally new role in this defense. You've got Mike Dana, a solid depth piece who's been a quality starter on winning defenses before. You've got Michael Holt, who, when healthy, flashed serious, undeniable talent in his limited action last season. You've got Shaq Lawson, a player whose skill set might finally be perfectly suited for this new defensive scheme after years of being a slight tactical mismatch. And you've even got depth options like Javon Solomon and Andre Jones rounding out a room that's genuinely 6 players deep with real legitimate NFL talent. That's the kind of depth that gives a coaching staff options, and options are exactly what you want heading into a long, grueling season. Now, let's flip the script, because it's not all sunshine and roses here. There are some very real reasons to be concerned about this group too, and we'd be doing you a disservice if we didn't dig into them. The biggest overarching question hanging over this entire unit is simple. Can the sum of the parts actually provide enough impact when there's no true superstar leading the way? There's no Myles Garrett walking through that door. No Nick Bosa. No Will Anderson. Just a collection of solid, interesting players without a true game-wrecking headliner. Now, to be fair, some of the league's most successful recent teams have proven that you don't necessarily need that one dominant superstar to win it all. Depth and scheme can absolutely carry a defense. But historically, Buffalo has tried the depth over star power approach before, and it hasn't quite gotten them over the hump. So the question remains, can a new scheme and a couple of fresh additions finally change that equation? Can a room full of solid role players finally combine to give this team the impact production of a true difference maker? That remains to be seen. Then there's the Michael Hogt situation, and this one is a genuine wild card. Hogt tore his Achilles in the middle of last season, and while all the early rehab footage looks encouraging, with reports of him moving more fluidly and cutting sharper with each passing month, injuries like that are simply unpredictable. Recovery timelines can vary wildly from player to player, and history has shown that players coming back from serious injuries aren't always immediately back to full strength. Is he going to be ready for training camp? Ready for week 1? Might he need to open the season on the physically unable to perform list? All of that remains a genuine unknown, and it's a significant variable for a defense that was counting on him to be a real difference maker in this new scheme. And that uncertainty around Hogt ties directly into the next major concern. Just how much responsibility might end up falling on a rookie in TJ Parker? On one hand, that's exactly the kind of opportunity every young player dreams about. A chance to prove himself immediately and make a real impact from day one. But when you consider that Hogt's availability is uncertain, and that Bradley Chubb is a player the team will likely want to manage carefully given his extensive injury history, that leaves a whole lot of responsibility potentially landing squarely on the shoulders of a rookie who hasn't played a single professional snap yet. Chubb's injury history, by the way, is significant. A torn ankle back in 2019 that cost him 12 games, ankle troubles across 2020 and 2021 that cost him 11 more, and then another torn ankle in December of 2023 that wiped out his entire 2024 season. He was fully healthy and played nearly 800 snaps last year, which is genuinely encouraging, but given everything he's been through, there's a strong case to be made that Buffalo should manage his workload carefully this year rather than leaning on him for another full, heavy snap count. And if that happens, even more falls on Parker's plate as a true rookie. It could go incredibly well. It could also be a lot to ask. Nobody knows yet, and that uncertainty is exactly why it's a legitimate point of concern heading into the season. Now let's shift gears one more time and talk about the pieces of this puzzle that are simply fascinating to watch unfold. Because there's a lot of intrigue buried in this group beyond just the 2 new additions. Take Shaq Lawson, for example, entering his 3rd stint with this organization. When Buffalo drafted him years ago, the front office openly admitted at the time that he wasn't necessarily a perfect scheme fit, but his production was simply too good to pass up. Well, fast forward to now, and this new defensive system might finally be the exact style of football that unlocks what Lawson does best. Then there's Javon Solomon, a player who put together an incredibly productive college pass rushing career despite lacking some of the elite physical traits teams typically covet, whether that's elite explosiveness, ideal length, or great bend around the edge. And yet, he's got that rare, hard-to-teach feel for angles and leverage that allows him to consistently win as a pass rusher anyway. What's especially impressive is how he earned real defensive snaps and an active game day roster spot last season purely through his special teams value and flashes of pass rush ability, even in a scheme that wasn't really built for his skill set. Now, with a system that might actually be tailored more toward what he does well, there's real intrigue in seeing just how much more he can unlock. And then there's Greg Rousseau, maybe the most fascinating case of them all. He's an excellent football player, a legitimately great run defender who's just never quite been the double-digit sack artist some fans have hoped for. For years, he's played a traditional, straightforward role along the defensive line. Now he's being asked to transition into a totally different, stand-up outside linebacker role in this new scheme. And by all accounts from his recent media availability, he sounds genuinely energized and excited about the change. Nobody knows exactly what this new role unlocks for him yet, but that unknown is precisely what makes it worth watching so closely. Finally, there's the big overarching question of how this entire rotation actually shakes out once the season begins. Looking at how this exact coaching philosophy was deployed previously in a similar scheme elsewhere in the league, the blueprint appears to call for roughly a four-man rotation with two primary options pushing towards 700 snaps each, and two complementary pieces rotating in around 400 to 500 snaps apiece. Buffalo doesn't have an obvious one-for-one replica of every specific role from that previous system, so how exactly this coaching staff chooses to distribute snaps across this deep, versatile room is going to be one of the more fascinating storylines to track once real football actually kicks off. There's also a real chance this staff diverges from that blueprint entirely by allowing some of these edge rushers to line up in tighter alignments closer to the football, which frankly makes a ton of sense given the physical profile of this specific group. These aren't burst and bend speed rushers who thrive taking long, looping paths to the quarterback from wide alignments. These are powerful, heavy-handed players who might actually be far more effective attacking from shorter, more direct angles. If the coaching staff recognizes that and adjusts accordingly, it could end up being the difference that finally optimizes this unit's overall effectiveness. So there you have it. A pass rush room loaded with intrigue, real question marks, and legitimate upside all rolled into one. No true blockbuster superstar anchoring the unit, but a genuinely deep, talented, and versatile group that has every opportunity to surprise people if the health holds up and the scheme fits click into place the way the coaching staff is clearly hoping they will. So Bills Mafia, we want to hear from you. Are you buying into this depth over star power approach, or do you think Buffalo still needs to find that true game-wrecking superstar up front before this defense can take the next step? Do you think TJ Parker is ready to handle a massive rookie workload right out of the gate? Sound off in the comments and let us know exactly where you stand. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single breakdown as we count down toward training camp. We've got plenty more position group deep dives coming your way, so stay locked in. Go Bills. We'll see you in the next one.